Hi, friends. Very good evening to you. And what a great concept inner child healing was, Lina. I did not even think of it as a tangible thing, but as we started our research and discussing it, the concept really started to take shape and made so much sense, Lina. The last episode with Robin Grill was fantastic and such good insights that we got out of the session.
Agnelorajesh, good evening from Sydney. What we have established through the research and conversations between ourselves and with all the guests on the show, including Robin Grill, is that whatever pain we don't heal will show up in one way or another. The other aspect we have explored is the link between parents who struggle in their relationship with their own child and with
Mhm.
other people, and how much of a connection this actually has between that problem and what they experienced, as they were growing up, their own inner child wounds, and so everything that is relatable to our children and other relationships actually has so much to do with our own upbringing.
Fantastic, Lina. In fact, Robin Grill explained this so beautifully. Also, the knowing that our parenting style is likely to be inherited from our parents, and that if we have wounds, we will parent from these wounds, and the pain cycle is likely to continue.
Yes, and any painful cycles we want to heal have to be intercepted in some way or the
Yes.
other. So today I'd like to extend this to an area of discussion that we have touched upon when you and I discussed the inner child concept, and then when we spoke to Robin Grill as well. This is the concept of the types of attachments we form. It's really important to discuss because attachment styles are passed down generation to generation at an amazing rate of 75%.
Yes.
So this is really important because our attachment styles not only affect, our inner child, but also affect our relationships with other people and the way that we parent.
So, Lina, I'm aware of the importance of these conversations. In fact, there is so much I have learned about myself, and it has made me more mindful of the way I parent.
So there are studies conducted, that look at the influence of parental attachment, and it has been found that secure attachments provide emotional, motivational, and practical resources that actually contribute, significantly to how resilient a child becomes.
So, it is not only economic stability that goes on to determine how resilient and successfully and how happy a child is. In fact, attachment styles also affect a child's future, Lina.
So, little doubt that relationships are essential to success and happiness, right? In all areas of our lives, whether it's at work, it's personal, whatever it is. So, attachment theory helps us understand why some people seem to form connections so much more easily than other people, why some of us can sort of trust a relationship wholeheartedly without actually losing ourselves in that relationship, and while others have to either be consumed by a relationship or kind of avoid one altogether.
Lovely. So, Lina, we have Vinita Melvani with us. I love she joins the fastest and the first as soon as we start on the dot of 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you, Vinita, for that. There is Sandeep Pote wishing us a very good evening. And there is Divya Punjabi who says good evening from Mumbai. Thanks, Meghna Parik, for joining us. Thank you, Anand Sethi, for joining us. Thank you, Preeti Shrimal Gangwal, for joining us. All send their greetings to you. Lina, let's look at the word attachment. What specifically does it mean in this context that we are discussing today?
So, attachment specifically refers to how we mammals rely on our caregivers, usually our parents, for nurturance from when we are born, right till we grow through maturity, when we can actually survive without any caregivers. So,
Mhm.
a few significant attachment figures will naturally shape our growth. Our parents, our grandparents, very close relatives, by the ways in which they communicate with us from when we were born, from our earliest days. So, attachment research has shown that those children who are fortunate to develop what is called secure attachment are most likely to grow up into caring, thoughtful, reflective, emotionally and socially intelligent, resilient individuals who actually thrive in the world. So then we all know that the need to be loved, appreciated, and feeling secure is rooted in human nature. So the basic need for attachment is in our genes. This desire is from an evolutionary perspective, as a means of survival. Our ancestors learned from very, from so many centuries ago that attachment increases our chances of survival.
So, Lina, attachment is the bond we form with our first primary caregiver, which is usually a parent.
Absolutely. So it's a universal human phenomenon that starts as early as when a child is in a womb, and the way we develop our attachment eventually affects the way we find, keep, and the way we end relationships.
We have already explored, Lina, what happens if children, grow up with their
Mm.
emotional needs which are unmet. They can't have healthy romantic relationships. We have all seen enough of Netflix to know that, big beach homes, diamonds, the Jimmy Choo shoes, they don't mean much if love is on the rocks.
Absolutely, yeah. And let's face it, we can all do with some help when the initial euphoria of love begins to fade. Because then we will all depend on emotional attachment and the emotional bond that we create to sustain any relationship.
So, Lina, what is the reason it starts to fade? We all know it does, but maybe we all don't understand why it does.
So the first in love phase of attraction is
Mhm.
obsessive and it's instinctual. It
Mhm.
actually exists just so that we can perpetuate the species. So
Okay.
after this physical phase is when we need to focus on the emotional environment to sustain a relationship. After this initial phase is over, it's essential to understand your partner's attachment style and sort of speak the same love language as
Mhm.
your partner needs. So there's a neuroscientific explanation of why we feel high when we're in love. Love activates certain areas in our brain,
Mhm.
specifically the ones that have high concentrations of dopamine.
So, dopamine is associated with reward, desire, and euphoric states. So, love literally makes us feel high, Lina.
Yes, what a good student you are, AR. Yes, and the other neurochemical that appears at higher concentrations when a person is in love is oxytocin.
Okay.
Interestingly, when we fall in love, the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, becomes deactivated, which means our fear responses when we are in love are dampened. Possibly the reason why so many affairs happen. And even more interesting is that the brain region called the frontal cortex, the logical CEO of our brain, experiences a decrease in activity. So
Excellent.
amygdala and logic low, and dopamine high. So that kind of, it activates a certain sort of behavior. And this is one of the reasons why so many fatal attractions could happen.
Fantastic, Lina. So, this would explain the term falling madly in love,
Yeah.
which many people experience all the time. It is partial madness. So, if the CEO of our brain is not active, we are less likely to see red flags when we fall in love. So, we all think that love is a matter of the heart when it is actually happening in the brain. Let us understand, Lina, with this conversation, let us understand attachment styles to begin with. We touched on this when we discussed the inner child, but let's go deeper on this conversation, Lina.
So, if as a child you felt consistently taken care of, and you had one or more
Mhm.
people you could go to who would meet your who would meet your physical and emotional needs, and you could rely on them, you likely developed a secure attachment style. With this style as an adult, so if you have a secure attachment style, it's easier to build relationships, and specifically romantic relationships. A securely attached adult will find it easier to sort of meet the love language needs of their partner. So
Mhm.
if a partner has a need for more compliments, for example, if you're securely attached, you won't feel like pulling away, nor will it trigger any feelings inside you like that you're failing or doing something wrong if you don't meet it. Generally, securely attached people are warm, loving, and more comfortable with intimacy and more comfortable with their partner's needs.
Wow. So we should all look for securely attached people to have a relationship with, Lina.
Absolutely, but this is where the problem lies because only about 50% of the population is securely attached.
So where does the rest of the 50% of the population stand in regard to their attachment style, Lina?
So, approximately 20% of the population has an anxious attachment style. These
Mhm.
people desperately desire intimacy but worry continually about their relationships and their partner's ability to love them. They often doubt their partner's ability to love them. 25% of the population have an avoidant attachment style. Adults with an avoidant attachment style, they want intimacy, but only at a distance because they also fear losing their independence. The remaining 5% falls into a fourth, less common category.
Mhm.
Um, and this category is like a combination of anxious and avoidant attachment styles. But today, let's just focus on the major three: secure attachment, anxious attachment, and avoidant
Mhm.
attachment. So, people with different types of attachment styles will approach relationships, love, intimacy, and commitment in very, very different ways.
So, Lina, if you know someone's attachment style, can you predict their behavior and responses in a relationship?
Almost always predictable. Securely attached people trust themselves and their environments and are able to easily articulate their needs through communication. They don't have to do it by acting up through behavior. The securely attached values the needs of the partner as importantly as his or her own. Anxiously attached people feel insecure in a relationship, and deal with the insecurity by being sort of hyper vigilant, hypersensitive, hyper suspicious about their partner and the relationship. So anxiously attached people want to stay very, very close to their partners. These are the people we often brand as clingy or needy. And when these people's needs are not met, the
Mhm.
anxious attachment style people, when their needs are not met, they often act out. And, they act out to try and get their needs met. Often, this acting out actually has nothing to do with the real, it comes from a need or the wound. It's got nothing to do with anything else.
Fantastic. So I've understood secure attachment and anxious attachment. But before I go to my next question to you, Lina, Divya Punjabi has some information that she shared. She's got two questions posted. So exactly what Maslow stated, that is why when children grow up having lower order needs, uh, okay, so I'll repeat this again. So, exactly what Maslow stated, that is why when children grow up having lower order needs met like safety, security, and love, they are more likely to learn, grow, and self actualize and thrive in the world. Right, Lina?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Divya. So correctly said. Maslow's hierarchy of needs says that if you haven't met the lower order needs, you cannot meet the need to thrive and self actualize, which is why it's so important when we're bringing up our kids to think of secure attachment as something that we should parent them for.
So, she's again extended her question saying, Lina, so these children will have higher EQ and interpersonal skills?
Absolutely, Divya. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Smriti Agarwal has a question. How would we know the attachment style of an adult when we do not know about their childhood? What personality traits can we look for? So please don't answer this, Lina, because I have got questions in my mind related to what Smriti has asked. So I'm sure we'll cover that there. And Sandeep Pote has a question. What are the best ways to develop strong attachment with children, and how we can make our children comfortable to discuss and share their feelings without any fear of misjudging?
So, Sandeep, the way to for your child to have a secure attachment is for him to feel safe or her to feel safe physically and emotionally that you're going to be there to meet their needs. So you don't want to do it in a way that overshadows them or is overprotective of them, because then they become dependent, and that is becomes like an anxious attachment style or an avoidant attachment style. So what you do want to do is just make sure that you're there, but not overbearing, and you're just there to meet safety, security, and love needs of your child.
Fantastic. Thank you, Smriti Agarwal. We think alike. Lina, I understood the concept of secure attachment and anxious attachment. What would you explain about avoidance attachment?
So people with avoidant attachment styles are uncomfortable being too close to others, and they often find it difficult to depend upon someone else. So these are the people often in a relationship you see pull in and pull out. When somebody gets too close, then they'll sort of come up with deactivating strategies. So they'll sabotage the relationship. So these are behaviors or thoughts that are used to avoid intimacy and disengage from their partners. So they do have a need for attachment, but are scared of it at the same time, and that's why they pull in and pull out.
Oh, okay. So, Lina, I've observed that this self-sabotaging behavior of anxious and avoidance attachment, I've observed that. If we have 50% of the population securely attached, Lina, then the remaining 50% with anxious and avoidance attachment should ideally form relationships with the securely attached, right?
So true, Agnelorajesh. But it is so fascinating that people with anxious and avoidant attachment styles are attracted to each other. It's almost like opposites attract. So instead of finding their relationship as a calm and safe place, they actually end up further wounding each other. So the partner who is anxiously attached craves intimacy, while the partner with an avoidant attachment style feels uncomfortable when things become too close. So neither of the two of them are ever secure in the relationship.
Oh, so both people in the relationship deepen each other's wounds as they trigger each other's insecurities?
Absolutely. So the anxious partner will want to be exclusive, move in together, get married, all those kinds of things. The avoidant partner may want to see other people, stay in separate houses, and avoid any sort of formal commitment. Also, the anxious partner is often the one who makes concessions in the relationship, accepting rules imposed by the avoidant partner in an attempt to keep the relationship and keep the access to the intimacy, closeness, and everything else intact.
Fantastic. Friends, these are very interesting conversations, and the topic is so interesting. I encourage you to not only make comments but also ask questions, and I'm sure you will be very happy with the answers that you receive. So, Lina, we know some of the patterns of the three attachment styles. Are there any personality traits that each style tends to have?
So you've actually stolen Smriti Agarwal's question.
I had that question right from the beginning of the session in my mind, Lina. So I requested you don't answer Smriti Agarwal. I have a similar question in my mind.
So the anxious attachment individual will usually appear very charismatic and warm because they've mastered the art of getting their own needs met. Ever since they were very young, they always relied on others to feel safe and protected and used charisma to get that need met. So they want to connect and they tend to be more giving. Their childhood wound is usually not feeling worthy of love. So, they tend to overachieve, overgive, overperform. And if these anxious attachment individuals fear losing a relationship, that the anxiety button comes on. So that's your anxious avoidant, your anxious attachment. Then you've got your avoidant. So the
Mhm,
avoidant is also charming, but also dismissive. So you know that the aloof, charming person is your avoidant. They
okay.
avoid sharing personal details and need to create a lot of space in a relationship. They also have more fear of the bond than of losing
Mhm,
it. So they're more scared
okay.
of the bond than of losing it. They want connection, but also scared of connection because their childhood wound is betrayal. So the secure individuals feel worthy of love. They
Mhm,
don't engage in games like playing hard to get, and they
mhm.
can often appear very boring because of their availability.
Fantastic, Lina. I'm just enjoying this conversation, and I'm sure the audience, our Korabris, are also enjoying this. We will be definitely motivated and encouraged with your comments and questions. We look forward for them. There are so many interesting people already in the conversation, and I encourage more of you to ask us questions or at least comment on what we are speaking, and it becomes more and more exciting as we go along. Lina, this is really fascinating. And actually, Lina, we know that secure, anxious, and avoidant styles are more or less a result of how safe and secure we felt as children with our caregivers. We spoke about the inner child healing, Lina. How could we all become more securely attached?
So Sandeep sort of asked a similar question earlier.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's not only a feeling of safety and security that a child receives. when a child feels the comfort of a secure base, so they need to know that the secure base is here of, of safety and security. If they know that that's there, then they feel confident to go out and explore the world on their own and then come back. So if you're not securely attached, just being in a relationship with somebody who is can help
Mhm,
you. So when both are not secure, the relationship will be exhausting. So
mhm,
awareness about your attachment style is a start.
mhm,
um, if you start to do things differently, you can start to rewire your brain. We've been
mhm,
talking
mhm,
about this all the time, that we have the capacity to rewire our brain, and you've got the capacity, all of us, to rewire our brain to a more secure attachment model. So if you can step into your unconscious mind, it can
mhm.
help you reform the way you approach relationships. So people who
Okay.
go to therapy, like therapists like Robin Grill, can
Mhm,
often help you rewire, because the
mhm.
therapist takes on the role of the caregiver and begins this whole process of healing.
Wow. So human adult relationships are a complicated reflection of our childhood wounds and attachment styles.
Yes, absolutely. And when we look around us, think of all the patterns of behavior we see between parents and their kids. So, parents who have an anxious attachment style may be uncomfortable with emotional or physical separation from their child. These are the parents who are clinging to their kids. They're inclined to come up with tactics to keep their child close, and away from what they view or they perceive as danger. So anything that creates too much distance between them and their kid, anything that doesn't involve them personally, it creates anxiety in them because they're anxiously attached. So then they come up with a lot of reasons to keep their child close, and often return to them when the child would actually be really happy exploring the world, and learning and growing.
Wow. So these children would be encouraged to always look to their parents for help and would stay developmentally dependent on the parent.
Yes, these are often the kids who are overly dependent on their parents, even as adults. So the need for comfort and security, we've already assessed, it's an inborn need, right? We have evolved to seek attachment to older, wiser caregivers to protect us from danger, from when we were babies, when we were helpless. So if you study parents and their kids together, you can kind of predict what type of adult relationships these children will form and whether or not they will need therapy. Very often, children who are born of anxiously attached parents don't go off to form bonds on their own, because their parents have always kept pulling them back. Um, Early interaction with any caregiver sort of dramatically affects your beliefs about yourself, your expectation of other people, and the way that you process information, cope with stress, regulate your emotions when you are an adult. So you can imagine the difference in how a baby will process the world if a baby is crying, in pain, or hungry, and he is either soothed and comforted by a parent or ignored by a parent. You can imagine how differently the outcomes will be.
So, Lina, I guess one baby will see the world as a safe place where others can be depended on and trusted. So, the child who's ignored would become either an anxious, attached adult, distressed by separation, or avoidant. If as a baby he or she learned to suppress emotions and deal with stress alone, we see so many cases all around us.
Yes, and if these interactions are frequent and repeated, this is what
Mhm.
becomes sort of neurally encoded, and then this is what we subconsciously activate later in our life. So the things then that we spoke about, like triggers, is so then an experience even slightly vaguely similar to what's encoded in our subconscious alerts the amygdala, and then you see the world, or the relationship through this distortion. So anxious people, we know, have very low self-esteem. They're easily overwhelmed by negative emotions, and they tend to exaggerate threats. So this is the person in the relationship, who's always suspicious and always jealous. Every small ping on their partner's phone can create an amygdala trigger.
And now imagine this suspicious, anxious person teamed up with an avoidant who needs distance, autonomy, and control.
Yes, not only distance, autonomy, and control. These avoidance also detach from strong emotions, both
Mhm.
positive and negative. So they've learned to become emotionally numb, and so are not able to understand their partner's reaction at all. So this suspicious behavior only detaches them even further.
Wow. So the anxious partner distorts and exaggerates the threats and misleads them into seeing their partners as unreliable. And instead of helping the relationship, it actually harms the relationship.
Yes. And just like, inner wounds can be healed, you can work your way from an insecure attachment style to a more secure one. In doing this work, you become self-regulated and emotionally empowered. You can either work with a therapist on this, or you can actually build your own inner resources to deal with it.
So if you have asked yourself why you can't love someone the way you want to, see a familiar pattern of clinging or pushing away, it is comforting to know that we can approach relationships differently and solve attachment challenges, right, Lina?
Absolutely. So each one of us who has the awareness of insecure attachment can either work with a therapist
Mhm.
who is skilled in attachment work, like Robin Grill was. And this therapist can help you create a bridge between the younger version of yourself and who
Mhm.
you are today. So they can actually reparent you. So these attachment gaps can be closed, memories can be reconstructed. You have the power to remodel your brain and heart. This is in answer to Deepa's question as well. We can change the pattern of anxious attachment, Deepa.
Fantastic. So, Lina, this takes me back to the memories of our moonshot conversations of growth mindset and the power of the story. The power to know that we can remold our brain structure, shift our narrative, and accept new ways of thinking. I think this also answers Deepa again.
Yes. So, brain plasticity is one of the most insightful things that we have learned about the human brain and humanity. So, you can either go to a trained therapist or you can follow these steps. One is acknowledge that you have an insecure attachment pattern. Two, share your attachment story with and behaviors with a therapist, a supporting friend who is not a member of your family, or use the inner child healing process that we discussed, where you reparent your inner child. That's the one before Robin Grill. We did that episode. Number three is work towards accurately identifying and expressing your emotions through this whole process, like any emotions that come up, like sadness or anger or feeling betrayed. Number four is you learn to slow down when connecting with others. So start learning to respond from a more resourced place rather than reacting. So
Mhm.
when a trigger occurs and suddenly you've decided what you want to do, pause, and before doing it, ask yourself, am I responding or am I reacting?
Fantastic, Lina. There are comments that are coming our way, including some questions. Deepa Bhushan, thank you for your acknowledgement. There is a question and a long statement made by Girija Gopinath, where she is mentioning that despite the kind of childhood experiences a child must have had, as an adult, one can do some inner work and be more safe and secure of their place and space, and thus not cause wounds to others that they went through.
Absolutely, Girija. And stop causing wounds to yourself, which is even more important.
Which is absolutely more important. So Divya Punjabi is trying to test on my pronunciation skills by using very difficult words, but I'll still make an attempt. She is asking, does this become the reason for the Oedipus and Electra complexes also, Lina?
Uh, I wouldn't really connect attachment styles to the Oedipus and Electra complex. Um, there's very vague strands, but I wouldn't connect the two.
Thank you, Divya, for posting such difficult words. You're actually testing me online. Lina, I love the concept of self mastery. The fact that we don't have to be victim to our childhood and past experiences, that we can, bring awareness and acknowledge our attachment past. We also have power to decentralize those events, and by consistently reflecting, we have, the past plays a very critical role, and what it takes to develop a sense of mastery regarding our beliefs and responses to past and present relationships.
Yes, and as we keep reflecting and tweaking our responses, so we are responding, not reacting, the neocortex of our brain will keep creating fresh neural pathways. And as a result, we'll find new ways of attaching, more secure ways of attaching. We integrate all of this in our brain. Our brain keeps changing.
In fact, it reminds me of what you said in one of our Moonshot conversations, Lina. Your inner world creates your outer world.
Absolutely, Agnelorajesh. Your inner world. So you've got your inner world, you then create new neural pathways, you settle your nervous system, so you respond rather than react with a fight, flee, or fright reaction. You experience then less pain and discomfort and more joy, love, and connection. And you will start seeing a shift in all your adult relationships. And then you start building a healthier cycle. So you change your inner world, that changes your outer world. Your new outer world experiences strengthens and solidifies your healthier neural pathways, which is your inner world. So they both keep, it's like a cycle. Your inner world changes your outer world, and your outer world changes your inner world.
And when you do this, you parent from this healthier space. Lina, this intervention can increase the population in the world that has a more secure attachment style. We can increase trust and security in the world when when one person with one person at a time. As you said earlier, Lina, 75% of attachment styles are passed down from generation to generation, and this is what will help build stronger children, adults, communities, the nation, and absolutely the entire world.
Yep. So instead of unconsciously replaying, you know, the absent, dismissive, mean, clingy parent that we've been parented through, we become more aware, conscious, mindful, and reflective. And in this process, one child at a time, we can have a huge impact on the future of the world. We have such a huge impact in the future of one child's emotional, physical, and academic development as well when we parent this way.
Why an academic development, Lina?
Because it's like what Divya said earlier, anxious children who are used to having to perform to gain their parents' approval and proximity may look like high achievers, but they never reach the height of their own unique potential because they're so used to judging their own accomplishments by someone else's standards. So the most important thing is, as Divya said, to meet the lower Maslow needs: safety, security, love. And children caught up in this, wanting to earn love, um, they sort of become compliant towards their parents and their
Mhm.
teachers, and what their parents and teachers see as excellence, and do so at the expense of their own curiosity. So these kids kind of want to please all their caregivers, including their teachers. So they consistently and continually ask themselves, what does my teacher want? What will please my teacher? What does my parent want? What will please my parent? And you don't want this, because you don't want compliance, you want curiosity, you want this hunger for learning. When children form secure attachments, they are curious, want to learn and explore. Children will always vary, obviously, in their intellectual capabilities, but with a secure attachment, each child can be primed to fulfill their unique potential.
So, friends, if our children are insecure or in a in a fight, flight, or flee mode, their learning will be affected. Which child or adult, for that matter, can focus on learning if we are preparing to be abandoned or be disciplined in a mean way? What would you like to comment on that, Lina?
So success, happiness, and fulfillment is dependent on our self-esteem. We know that, right? So many parents kind of feel that their child's self-esteem will be stronger if if they are told that they're better than others, or they're the best, or they performed well. As the growth mindset episode kind of reminds us, this not only helps build a fixed mindset, but it also contributes to only improving narcissism rather than self-esteem. Self-esteem comes from attachment security, and this is what we want for our children. We want our children to be successfully attached, securely attached, so that their success, happiness, and fulfillment is a given.
Wow, this reminds me of the famous book by Amit Chugh, Battle Hymen of the Tiger Mother. This book was a serious reminder of how seriously parents view their child's success as a reflection of how they have performed the task of parenthood?
So, battle hymn of the tiger mother. I see this. I see Amy's phenomenon as associated with anxious attachment. So I believe, because it's a true story, Amy's implicit childhood memories were carried out in her own style of parenting. So even in India, the common perception is that successful child equals successful parent, and many parents mistake that their feelings as love, when they don't want to go out when their kids have got exams, etc., etc. But in fact, they're acting in ways that are insensitive and intrusive to their child's development. These parents can either be overprotective, and fully focused on their child's performance. They try to live vicariously through their kids. And here I quickly want to touch on parenting styles, all right? Not attachment styles. Now I'm talking about parenting styles, because this also impacts our child's attachment style. So Amy in the book is the authoritarian parent. She's
Mhm.
strict and has very high expectations associated with being a tiger mom. Then you have uninvolved parenting, where a parent is emotionally detached and self-absorbed, sort of absent. Then you have permissive parenting, which is nurturing and affectionate, but does not set any boundaries, so kids can basically do what they want, and children need boundaries to feel safe. And then you have a style that all parents should work towards, which is authoritative parenting: nurturing, affectionate,
Mhm.
sets boundaries and guides and communicates. I believe the first three lead to insecure attachments, and that the fourth, the authoritative parenting, leads to a secure attachment.
So, Lina, the power of the last three conversations revolving around the inner child healing and how some of these arise out of trauma and from our attachment styles has been very, very fascinating. Just knowing we can essentially create whatever reality we desire is so comforting, Lina. It gives a reassurance in totality that any negative self beliefs, traumas, and fears that we have experienced as children can be healed by our older, wiser, and more seasoned selves.
Yes, and a lot of neuroscience and even evolutionary biology supports what you just said.
Where to next, Lina? We have almost run out of time. So where to next?
So the last few conversations have been emotionally intense. Next week, I want to explore a less intense conversation called love languages. I want everyone to please come online with a paper and a pen. Um, and then there we go.
I'm sure, Lina, while it may be a less intense conversation, I know it will still be a highly engaging one. So, friends, see you next Sunday, the 28th of March at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And we will be there. Lina will be there with us at 10 p.m. That will be the time where she is currently, that is in Australia.
10:30.
10:30 p.m.
Yes.
10:30 p.m. Australia
So
time. Yes.
So let's all keep being in the now of awareness, use the power of reflection and journaling to fuel our success, happiness, fulfillment, and romantic connection. And the journal is fantastic. So please, everyone, download it.
Thank you so much. And we began the session today. The first comment was from Vinita Melvani. The last thumbs up is again, the last message is again from Vinita Melvani. And now Sandeep Pote has come over. So thank you, Shakuntala, Sandeep, Sandesh Raul, Sandeep Pote, Vinita Melvani, Deepa Bhushan, Bhavika Parekh, Smriti Agarwal, Girija Gopinath. Loads of you all. Thank you so much. Divya Punjabi, Deepa Bhushan. Uh, you know, Shubhangi Tirorkar, Nailesh Shah, so many of you all online. We really appreciate you joining us on this session, and we love the comments you make. We love the questions that you ask, and it makes it so interesting and exciting. So, see you all again next Sunday at the same time, 5 p.m. sharp, Indian Standard Time,
With
and
pen
Lina
and
will
paper,
join us from Sydney.
with pen and paper, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye for the
See you
evening.
next Sunday.